Welcome to Readings in English, the channel dedicated to helping you master English through engaging stories. Learning English can be an exciting journey, but it often comes with its challenges, from understanding grammar and expanding vocabulary to building confidence in speaking. Here, we not only dive into language basics, but also explore advanced techniques that make learning faster and more enjoyable, focusing on grammar and context, practical phrases, and storytelling. Through each unique narrative, we guide you to better understand the language in an interactive and memorable way. In today's story, we meet a gifted painter who faces his own language challenge. When invited to an international exhibition, he realizes that his lack of English skills could be a barrier. Determined to connect with a wider audience, he embarks on a journey to learn English, using his paintings as a bridge between art and language. As he learns to describe his artwork in English, he discovers new ways to express himself, creating deeper connections through both his art and his words. Get ready to join this inspiring story of creativity and language learning. In a small town nestled among the hills of Italy, Matteo spent his days immersed in the quiet world of his art. His studio, a humble room filled with brushes, canvases, and the scent of fresh paint, had become his sanctuary, a place where he expressed emotions too deep for words. Each painting held a part of his soul, capturing the world not as it was but as he felt it should be. For Matteo, art was a language of its own, allowing him to speak in colors, textures, and forms that transcended mere words. Although he loved his secluded life, a part of him always dreamed of sharing his work with others, of reaching beyond his small town to connect with the wider world. One morning, as sunlight filtered softly through the windows, Matteo noticed a letter resting on his work table. Its appearance was unexpected, its paper thick and formal, with an international stamp that hinted at faraway places. With careful hands, he opened the envelope, unfolding the letter to read the elegant script within. It was an invitation, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to showcase his paintings at an esteemed exhibition in New York City. Matteo's heart swelled with excitement as he absorbed the significance of the offer. This was his dream and opportunity to present his art on an international stage, to share his vision with people from all walks of life. In that instant, he saw a glimpse of the future, filled with the promise of recognition and connection. Yet, as the initial thrill began to settle, a wave of uncertainty washed over him. New York was vast, bustling, and filled with people who spoke a language he barely understood. Matteo knew no English. The idea of standing in front of a foreign audience, unable to convey his thoughts, intimidated him deeply. His mind raced as he pictured himself trying to interact with critics, buyers, and fellow artists, struggling to find the right words. His lack of language skills felt like an insurmountable barrier, one that threatened to overshadow the opportunity before him. He worried that, without the ability to communicate, he would seem unprepared or even unworthy of the honor. As the days passed, Wateo found himself in a state of turmoil. He wandered through his studio, his gaze lingering on each painting, each stroke of color that held a story he longed to share. The thought of declining the invitation began to take root, gnawing at his heart as he wrestled with the decision. Part of him argued that it would be easier to remain in the comfort of his home, to continue painting in solitude without the risk of embarrassment. But another part of him, the part that had always dreamed of reaching beyond his small world, urged him to face the challenge. This internal conflict weighed heavily on him, casting a shadow over the excitement he had felt when he first read the letter. One evening, as he sat alone in his studio, Mateo closed his eyes and allowed his imagination to wander. He pictured himself standing in a grand gallery, surrounded by his paintings, each piece a fragment of his journey. He saw people gathered before his work, their faces filled with curiosity and wonder. Yet, in his mind's eye, he stood silently, unable to respond to their questions, unable to explain the stories behind his art. The imagined scenario filled him with a sense of isolation, as if he were a ghost among the living, present yet unable to be heard. The thought was painful, leaving him with a feeling of helplessness that threatened to consume his hope. In the days that followed, Mateo sought solace in the familiar sights of his town. He walked through narrow streets, passing familiar faces, recalling moments from his past when he had overcome obstacles that once seemed insurmountable. The memories reminded him of the resilience within him, the quiet strength that had guided him through other challenges. Slowly, he began to see the language barrier not as a wall, but as a door, a threshold he could cross if he had the courage to try. The realization was like a light breaking through clouds, illuminating a path forward that, though daunting, was also filled with possibility. Returning to his studio, Mateo felt a new resolve take root within him. He would not decline the invitation, nor would he let fear dictate his choices. Instead, he would face this challenge head-on, determined to learn the language that would allow him to connect with his audience. But he knew that traditional methods would not work for him. He needed a way to make English part of his art, to weave it into the very fabric of his creativity. Mateo decided that he would use his paintings as a tool for learning, transforming each canvas into a bridge between his world and the world beyond. In the quiet of his studio, surrounded by the works that held his dreams and his fears, Mateo made a promise to himself. He would learn English, not just for the exhibition, but to deepen his own journey, to find new ways to express the emotions that filled his heart. And so, with a steady hand and a determined spirit, he began to paint, each stroke of color step closer to the dream that had once seemed out of reach. This was the beginning of a new chapter, a path marked not only by colors and textures, but by words and meanings that would bring him closer to the people he longed to reach. And as the first light of dawn crept through his studio, Matteo felt a quiet sense of peace, knowing that he was ready to embrace the journey ahead. Matteo sat in his studio, surrounded by his paintings, each one an expression of his heart and soul. Despite the fear that lingered within him, he knew he could not turn away from the opportunity he had been given. But as he considered the path ahead, he realized that traditional language classes would not suit him. He could not imagine himself sitting in a classroom, repeating phrases and memorizing lists of vocabulary. He needed a way to make English feel alive, to connect it with his art in a way that would give the words meaning. As he pondered this, an idea began to form in his mind, one that filled him with both excitement and a sense of purpose. He decided that he would learn English through his paintings. Each word he learned would be paired with a piece of art, a visual representation of the concept it embodied. He would paint his way through the language, creating a bridge between the colors on his canvas and the words he wished to understand. The first words he chose were simple yet powerful, words that resonated with his art: color, light, and emotion. He selected these words not only because they were familiar to him, but because they represented the core of his artistic vision. Matteo took a blank canvas and began to paint. As he brushed each stroke of color onto the canvas, he whispered the word to himself, allowing it to settle into his mind. Color, he thought, feeling the richness of the hues he applied, each one a reflection of the beauty he saw in the world. Light, he continued, adding delicate strokes of white and yellow that brought the painting to life, capturing the essence of warmth and clarity. And finally, emotion, the feeling that poured from his heart onto the canvas, transforming the image into something more than a mere picture. By the time he finished, he felt a sense of accomplishment, as though he had taken a step closer to his dream. Over the following days, Matteo began to create what he called his language journal, a collection of paintings inspired by English words. With each new piece, he added a layer of depth to his understanding, finding connections between the language he was learning and the art he loved. Each canvas became a bridge between the word and its meaning, helping him internalize the vocabulary in a way that felt natural and true to his creative spirit. He found that as he painted, the words became more than just sounds or symbols. They became a part of him, blending with the colors and shapes that filled his mind. As he worked, Matteo began to notice a change within himself. The process of creating these language-inspired paintings brought him a sense of fulfillment that he had not anticipated. It was as if he were discovering a new aspect of his own identity, one that had been waiting to emerge. The isolation he had once felt, the barrier that had seemed so daunting, began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of connection to something larger than himself. Through his art, he was learning not only to speak English, but to embrace a new way of expressing his inner world. The more Matteo painted, the more he felt his confidence grow. Each new word added to his language journal became a stepping stone, building a foundation that he could rely on. He found himself choosing words that resonated with his journey, concepts that captured his emotions and experiences. Words like dream, journey, and courage became themes in his work, each one a reminder of the path he had chosen to follow. He painted scenes that symbolized his aspirations, using English as both inspiration and guide. And with each piece, he felt a sense of momentum, a feeling that he was moving forward, one brushstroke at a time. As he continued, Matteo encountered moments of frustration. There were times when certain words seemed impossible to capture, concepts that eluded his grasp despite his best efforts. He realized that some ideas were difficult to express through visual art alone, requiring a deeper understanding that he had yet to attain. But instead of giving up, he used these challenges as opportunities to grow. He studied the works of historical artists who had used symbolism to convey complex messages, finding inspiration in their ability to communicate without words. These artists became his silent mentors, guiding him as he sought to expand his vocabulary and deepen his artistic vision. One day, Matteo decided to challenge himself by painting a piece titled Hope. This word held special meaning for him, representing the light that had kept him moving forward, even when the path seemed uncertain. As he worked on the painting, he focused on the colors and shapes that he felt best captured the essence of hope. He used soft blues and vibrant yellows, blending them into a scene that conveyed both calmness and anticipation. And as he painted, he found himself able to articulate his intentions in English, describing the emotions he wanted to evoke with surprising clarity. This moment was a breakthrough for him, a sign that his journey was bearing fruit. By the time he completed the painting, Matteo felt a surge of confidence. He realized that he was no longer just learning English. He was creating a language of his own, one that combined words and images in a way that felt uniquely his. He began to imagine himself at the exhibition, standing before his paintings and sharing their stories with an audience. The fear that had once held him back now seemed distant, replaced by a quiet determination to connect with others, to let his art speak through the language he was beginning to understand. As he looked at his collection of language-inspired paintings, Matteo felt a deep sense of pride. Each piece represented a step forward, a testament to his courage and resilience. He knew that his journey was far from over, that there were still challenges ahead, but he felt ready to face them. With his art as his guide, he would continue to learn, to grow, and to reach for the dream that had once seemed beyond his grasp. And as he prepared for the next phase of his journey, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that he was on the right path. As Matteo's language journey continued, he encountered challenges that tested his patience and perseverance. Though his paintings had become a powerful tool for learning, he soon realized that some concepts could not be easily expressed through images alone. Certain English words and phrases held meanings that eluded his grasp, their nuances slipping through his fingers no matter how hard he tried to capture them in color and form. The frustration began to build, each failed attempt feeling like a reminder of how much he still had to learn. Yet, Matteo understood that these moments of struggle were a part of his growth. He refused to let them discourage him, viewing each challenge as an opportunity to deepen his understanding. In search of inspiration, Matteo began studying the works of historical artists who had used symbolism to convey complex ideas. He pored over their paintings, marveling at how they had managed to communicate profound messages without a single word. Each artist seemed to speak a silent language, their symbols and colors working together to tell stories that transcended time and place. Matteo found himself drawn to their techniques, learning how they used subtle details to express emotions and concepts that could not be easily spoken. These artists became his mentors, guiding him as he sought to expand his vocabulary and explore new ways of integrating language into his art. Motivated by these discoveries, Matteo decided to expand his list of words. He began choosing terms that represented more abstract concepts, ideas that went beyond the physical world. Words like freedom, movement, and connection became the focus of his next series of paintings. He approached each word with a sense of reverence, knowing that capturing these ideas would require both skill and insight. As he painted, he allowed himself to explore the depths of his own emotions, channeling his experiences into each brushstroke. The process was both challenging and rewarding, each piece pushing him further along his path. One evening, as Matteo worked on a painting titled Freedom, he found himself reflecting on his own journey. He thought about the moments of hesitation and doubt that had marked the beginning of his language quest, the fear that had nearly held him back. Now, standing before his canvas, he felt a sense of liberation, as though he were breaking free from the limitations he had once placed upon himself. The word freedom took on new meaning, becoming a symbol of his own growth and resilience. By the time he completed the painting, Matteo felt a surge of pride, knowing that he had captured something deeply personal and meaningful. With each new painting, Matteo began practicing the descriptions he would share with his audience. In the privacy of his studio, he stood before his art and spoke in English, struggling at first, but slowly finding the words to express his thoughts. His sentences were simple, his accent heavy, yet he felt a growing sense of accomplishment with every attempt. As he described the meaning behind each piece, he realized that he was not only learning to speak a new language, but also discovering a new way of relating to his art. The act of describing his paintings brought a new layer of depth to his work, allowing him to see his creations from a fresh perspective. Despite his progress, Matteo still faced moments of uncertainty. There were times when he questioned whether he would ever be able to communicate fluently, whether his efforts would truly make a difference. But each time doubt crept in, he reminded himself of the dream that had brought him this far. He remembered the invitation, the chance to share his art with the world, and the desire to connect with people who spoke a different language. These thoughts reignited his determination, giving him the strength to continue one step at a time. As Matteo worked on a piece titled Hope, he experienced an unexpected breakthrough. The painting, which depicted a sunrise over a calm sea, was meant to capture the feeling of new beginnings, the quiet optimism that accompanies the first light of day. As he painted, he found himself able to articulate his intentions in English with a clarity that surprised him. For the first time, he felt as though the words were flowing naturally, as if they had been waiting within him all along. This moment marked a turning point in his journey, a sign that he was ready to share his art and his voice with others. With renewed confidence, Matteo continued to prepare for the exhibition. He knew that his language skills were far from perfect, but he also understood that his art spoke a universal language, one that transcended words. This realization brought him a sense of peace, allowing him to embrace the imperfections in his English and focus instead on the message he wished to convey. He no longer saw the language barrier as an obstacle, but as a bridge, a way to reach across cultures and connect with people who shared his passion for art. As he looked around his studio, Matteo felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Each painting represented a step forward, a testament to his resilience and his commitment to his dream. He knew that the journey had not been easy, that he had faced challenges that might have discouraged others. But he also knew that every moment of struggle had brought him closer to his goal, shaping him into the artist and person he was meant to be. With his heart full of hope and his mind open to the possibilities ahead, Matteo prepared for the next phase of his journey, ready to share his story with the world. As Matteo continued preparing for the exhibition, he knew that the time had come to begin translating his paintings into words. It was not enough to simply create the art. He wanted his audience to understand the emotions and stories that each piece held. He wanted to convey his journey, the transformation he had undergone, and the dreams that had fueled every stroke of his brush. Translating these concepts into English felt daunting, but Matteo was determined to try. He began by selecting the paintings he would showcase in New York, carefully considering each piece, choosing those that best represented the themes of his life. Each canvas held a part of his story, a moment of his journey that he longed to share. With his chosen pieces before him, Matteo took a deep breath and set to work, crafting simple, clear descriptions for each painting. He understood that his English did not need to be complex or flawless. Instead, he focused on finding words that would connect with his audience, phrases that would convey the essence of his art. He began with his painting titled Freedom, describing it as a representation of breaking free from limitations and embracing new possibilities. He wrote about the colors. He had chosen the brush strokes that symbolized movement and liberation. Each sentence was a step forward, a bridge between his thoughts and the language he was still learning. As he moved on to his next piece, Hope, Matteo found himself feeling more confident. He described the calmness of the sunrise over the sea, the way the soft colors created a sense of peace and optimism. Writing these descriptions felt like a conversation, a way to connect with people who would stand before his work and wonder about the story behind it. With each description he wrote, Matteo felt his message taking shape, his voice becoming clearer. He imagined people reading his words, understanding the feelings he had poured into his art, and he felt a growing sense of excitement. To ensure his descriptions would resonate with his English-speaking audience, Matteo decided to seek the guidance of a local English teacher. He reached out to her, explaining his goal and his desire to connect with viewers at the exhibition. The teacher agreed to help, and Matteo invited her to his studio to review his work. When she arrived, he felt a mixture of nervousness and anticipation, aware that this was a final test of the language skills he had developed. As she read his descriptions, Matteo watched her expressions closely, searching for any sign of confusion or misunderstanding. To his relief, the teacher smiled as she read each passage, her eyes lingering on the paintings as though she could see the emotions behind the words. She praised his efforts, telling him that his descriptions were heartfelt and genuine. She noted that his simplicity made the words even more powerful, allowing the emotions to shine through without the need for complex language. Her encouragement filled Matteo with confidence, and he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had succeeded in finding a way to share his message, and he knew that his art would speak to people even if his English was not perfect. As he continued his preparations, Matteo began to feel a sense of calm settle over him. He realized that he did not need to strive for perfection, that his art spoke a language of its own, one that transcended words. This acceptance allowed him to let go of his fears, to embrace the imperfections in his English as a natural part of his journey. He no longer felt the need to worry about how others would perceive him, knowing that his art and his story were enough. This realization brought him a sense of peace, a quiet confidence that would guide him in the days leading up to the exhibition. The time soon came for Matteo to depart for New York. As he packed his paintings, carefully wrapping each one to protect it on the journey, he felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He knew that he was about to embark on a new adventure, one that would take him far from the familiar streets of his hometown. Yet he felt ready, his heart filled with anticipation for the experiences that awaited him. With his bags packed and his preparations complete, Mateo set off, leaving behind the world he had always known to pursue the dream that had once felt beyond his reach. Arriving in New York, Mateo was struck by the vibrancy of the city, the energy that pulsed through its streets. He felt a sense of wonder as he took in the sights and sounds, marveling at the diversity of people and the constant motion around him. This city was a world apart from his quiet town, a place where dreams and possibilities seemed to intertwine. As he made his way to the gallery, Mateo felt a surge of pride, knowing that he had come this far, that he was ready to share his art with people from all walks of life. Setting up his paintings in the gallery, Mateo felt a mixture of awe and accomplishment. The walls around him were adorned with works from renowned artists, each piece a testament to the creativity and passion of its creator. Standing among them, Mateo felt a sense of belonging, as though he had finally found his place in the world. As he arranged his paintings, he took a moment to reflect on the journey that had brought him here, the challenges he had faced, and the courage that had carried him through. This was the culmination of his efforts, a realization of the dream he had nurtured for so long. When the exhibition opened, Mateo watched as visitors entered the gallery, their eyes scanning the paintings, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and admiration. He felt a sense of excitement as they approached his work, reading the descriptions he had prepared, taking in the colors and shapes he had so carefully crafted. To his surprise, people responded to his art with warmth and appreciation, their faces lighting up as they connected with the emotions behind each piece. He saw them nodding in understanding, their eyes reflecting the feelings he had poured into his work, and he knew that his message had reached them. As the evening went on, Mateo experienced a profound sense of fulfillment. He realized that his journey had been about more than just learning a language. It had been about finding his voice, discovering the strength to share his story with the world. The language barrier that had once seemed so daunting had become a bridge, a way to reach out to others and invite them into his world. Through his art, he had created a connection that went beyond words, a bond that resonated on a deeper emotional level. And as he stood among the crowd, Mateo felt a sense of peace, knowing that he had found his place in the world. Mateo felt a rush of emotions as he stood in the gallery surrounded by his paintings and a growing crowd of visitors. The culmination of his journey was here, in this vibrant space filled with the hum of conversations, the soft footsteps on the polished floor, and the curious glances of people as they move from one piece to the next. He had come a long way from his quiet studio in Italy, a journey marked by courage, resilience, and a determination to overcome the language barrier that had once seemed so daunting. Now, with his paintings on display and his English descriptions beside each piece, Matteo was ready to connect with people from all walks of life, sharing the story that had brought him to this moment. As visitors approached his paintings, Matteo observed their reactions, the way their faces lit up with understanding as they read his descriptions. Each person seemed to find something unique in his work, a detail or color that resonated with their own experiences. Some looked at his painting of freedom, taking in the swirling colors and the sense of movement that symbolized the liberation he had felt. Others lingered before hope, the calm sunrise over a still sea, a piece that captured the quiet optimism he had discovered along the way. Watching them connect with his art filled Matteo with a profound sense of fulfillment, as though each brushstroke had found its way into the hearts of those around him. One particular moment stood out to Matteo that evening. A young art student from Italy approached him, her eyes shining with admiration. She spoke to him in Italian, sharing her art, his journey, and his decision to overcome the language barrier through art. She told him how inspiring it was to see someone use their passion to bridge gaps, to create a language that transcended borders. Her words touched Matteo deeply, a reminder of the power of art to bring people together, to create connections that went beyond words. In that brief conversation, he felt a connection to his homeland, a reminder that his roots and his journey were intertwined, each step shaping who he had become. Throughout the evening, Matteo continued to meet people who were moved by his work, each encounter reinforcing the purpose that had driven him from the start. He realized that his art had become a voice, one that spoke of resilience, hope, and the beauty of human connection. As he shared his story with strangers, he felt a sense of belonging, as though he had found his place in a world that had once felt so distant. The language that had once been an obstacle had become a tool, a way to amplify the message he had carried within him all along. In the quiet moments between conversations, Matteo found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. He thought of the early days when the idea of learning English had seemed impossible, a dream that felt out of reach. He remembered the long hours spent in his studio, the determination that had pushed him to keep going even when doubt crept in. Each memory was a reminder of the growth he had experienced, the transformation that had turned his fear into strength, his uncertainty into purpose. Standing in the gallery, surrounded by his paintings and the people who had come to see them, Matteo felt a deep sense of peace, a feeling that he had finally found his voice. As the night drew to a close, Matteo looked around the gallery, taking in the sight of his paintings one last time. Each piece represented a chapter of his journey, a story captured in color and form. He felt a sense of gratitude for the challenges he had faced, the moments of struggle that had shaped him into the artist and person he was today. He knew that his journey was not over, that there were still paths to explore, dreams to pursue. But he also knew that he had reached a milestone, a moment of clarity and fulfillment that would guide him forward. With a renewed sense of purpose, Matteo began to envision his next steps. He realized that language, like art, was a journey, a continuous process of growth and discovery. He felt inspired to continue learning, to expand his understanding, not only of English, but of the world around him. The connections he had made that night had shown him the value of reaching beyond oneself, of opening up to others and sharing the beauty of one's experiences. Matteo understood that his art and his journey were intertwined, each one a reflection of the other, and he felt a quiet determination to keep moving forward, to continue creating and connecting. Leaving the gallery at night, Matteo felt a sense of anticipation for the future. He walked through the bustling streets of New York, the energy of the city filling him with a sense of possibility. He knew that he had found something precious, a path that allowed him to blend his love for art with his desire to connect with others. As he walked, he thought about the people he had met, the conversations that had touched his heart, and he felt a profound gratitude for the journey that had brought him here. In the days that followed, Matteo returned to his studio with a renewed sense of purpose. His experience at the exhibition had given him a deeper understanding of his own journey, a realization that his art was more than just a means of self-expression. It was a bridge, a way to reach across cultures and connect with people on a fundamental level. With this newfound clarity, Matteo began to plan his next series of paintings, each one a continuation of the story he had started. He knew that he would continue to explore the themes of freedom, hope, and resilience, using his art to share the lessons he had learned along the way. As Matteo picked up his brush and began to paint, he felt a sense of calm, a feeling that he was exactly where he needed to be. The colors flowed freely, each stroke a reflection of his journey, a testament to the strength and courage that had carried him through. He no longer felt bound by limitations, no longer held back by the fear that had once seemed so overwhelming. Instead, he felt a quiet confidence, a trust in his own ability to create, to connect, to inspire. And so, with each new painting, Matteo continued to share his story, creating a legacy that went beyond language, beyond borders. His journey was far from over, but he knew that he had found his path, a way to use his art to touch the lives of others. And as he painted, he felt a sense of joy, a gratitude for the gift of expression, the power of art to reach into the hearts of those who were willing to listen. In that quiet studio, with his brush in hand and his heart open to the possibilities ahead, Matteo knew that he was ready to continue his journey, one brushstroke at a time,